Welcome to this week's newscast. I'm your host, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. To help me with this week's news is my co-anchor, Mr. Kevin Berglund. Thank you, Mr. Berglund, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, today we are going to continue our report of the meeting that was held January 23rd, 2020, the Rush Line Policy Advisory Committee. And we were there with our cameras to get the film footage of what was being discussed and also to get the comments from the public who attended the meeting. There were a number of individuals at the meeting who were attending because they were concerned for their business and the loss of parking that is going to result as the Rush Line is constructed, the BRT is constructed. Now, Mr. Berglund, you were there, and how long do they allot each person who has a comment during public comment?
Well, it's certainly not very long. I'm thinking it's 2 or 3 minutes. And I think the common culture, at least in this group, is that they allow people to get up just for the formality of it. It's not that they're really interested in trying to synthesize together as a group or as an individual what the point is or what's going on.
And I noticed that there were a number of people when they had comments, during public comment, their comments actually contained questions. And they're not really given answers to their questions, correct?
Well, and that's perplexing. These questions should be presented not to this Policy Advisory Commission because I think we are pretty much just there to applaud or to say, we've checked that box on to get the federal money. Because I think in the end, isn't that what they want? They want half of it paid for by the federal government.
Check the list off of requirements to get the federal money. Chick. Okay, yes, we did ask people what their opinion was, but it doesn't require that they have to pay attention. I don't know this, but I could see that the category is entitled Robust Community Engagement. Yes, no. Oh, yes, we must have had robust community engagement. We'll check the yes box because there's no quantifying what robust community engagement means.
This whole process is certainly not fact-driven, data-driven, driven by any kind of measurable statistics. As you can see, you have the chair of this committee, the mayor of White Bear Lake, and I don't know if she has any expertise in this, that she just sits there bored, almost to the point of yawning, while Andy Gitzloff, the guy who is the public employee from Ramsey County who is running this, just gives all these little one-liners and all these little attributes that have no verification.
Well, now, where we left off last week's newscast was the part of the meeting where they were indeed talking about some of their public engagement activities. One being talking to folks who live in the public housing in St. Paul. So let's take a look at that clip once more because we didn't really have an opportunity to analyze the discussion of this point.
So one population that we really tried to connect with over the last couple of months is residents of public housing developments, especially in St. Paul, especially near the downtown area. This is a population that's very transit dependent, very likely to be future riders of the Rush Line. So we've been giving a series of presentations to resident councils at various public housing developments. In December, we connected with 2 of them, the Valley High Rise, which is right by Gillette Children's Hospital, just north of downtown, and the Wabasha High Rise in downtown St. Paul. Shared about the project, got people's input about how they use transit today, how they would like to use transit in the future. Those were really supportive audience.
He indicated that the folks in these public housing high-rises, that they're very dependent on public transportation, and I have no doubt that that isn't true. I believe that they probably are very dependent on public transportation. But the question that I posed in our last program is that if you look at the rush line, exactly what along the rush line serves their needs? Is there a grocery store?
One thing that Frank, of course, he's not an elected official, he's another public employee of Ramsey County who is kind of like the sidekick of the one in charge there, Andy Givlaw. Public employees or planners, aren't they, what do they do? Do they connect with people, or do their primary roles, connect with people for an hour? Their primary role is to write a report. Frank, where is your report? This seems like something that you could have written a 20-page report on. There's no report. All we get is, well, they're very supportive in some kind of ambiguous general way. Frank, please give us a report, but I don't see the chair of this, the mayor of White Bear Lake, who gets a lot of, I'm sure, reports from White Bear Lake planners. She doesn't say, Frank, where's your report? Go through your report. It sounded like there was just a lot of heebie-jeebies there. No facts. Where's the evidence? Where's the data? There's missing.
And of course, the statement that they're very supportive, well, are they going to come to something and say, we're absolutely against you guys trying to get us better bus service? Of course they're not going to say that. But they're just maybe hoping that the BRT might help fill in some of the gaps of the current bus route system. But that leads us then to another problem, is that how are they going to get the BRT route and that system right if they can't get the regular bus routes right?
Frank and Andy, that team, because I mean, we have to respect their knowledge and their finesse. They're going to redo with their project. They're going to redo the whole many issues of the bus system. And of course, I can only imagine what happens when they go to some sort of housing project. They have, because people, like everybody, and if the bus system is something which is more affordable, they can probably list the number of complaints. I have this problem with it. I have this problem. It doesn't come on time. It's not safe. It's dirty. People are swearing on the bus. I don't feel safe again.
I can't get to a grocery store.
You can only imagine the complaints I hear. And what does Frank and Andy say? Don't worry. We're taking care of this with our bus rapid transit. Oh, we plan someday. It's not there now, but someday, I'm sure, we're not going to say when that day is. You might be dead by the time, but there's going to be a grocery store on this bus rapid transit. And of course, the way Frank pitches it, these are the resident consuls, implying that these people who are talking to him are actually in some way appointed or elected to a consul to bring based upon their election and accountability, to bring the information which the other residents have. Now, do you think for a resident consul, it sounds like this is when they have the business council in Maplewood? It's just the people who just show up for the presentation. They're in no way representing anybody else.
And even if they were somehow
if they were
organized as a residence group from that apartment building, sure, then they have that role, but they are not necessarily in a position to challenge the government, to challenge and say, well, okay, it's good they have a BRT, but how come you can't give us a bus route that gets us to a grocery store? I mean, that's part of what the issue is here. And so they're just using this, I think, that the consultants and the staff of Ramsey County are just using this as another way to check that box to say robust citizen engagement.
Right.
When the engagement, while it was done, what does it do to contribute to making the BRT a better route? I don't know, because there is, like you said, no report, no summary of what they would like to see and how the BRT is going to address it. And we know that the BRT for the Rush Line is going to go from Union Depot, meander through that part of St. Paul there off of University Avenue to find its way to Phelan Parkway, and then find its way to the Bruce Vento Trail, go through Maplewood and people's backyards. So the folks who live in those apartments, do they work at the Maplewood Mall? Do those folks in those apartments, do they work in White Bear Lake? Is that where they're going to? Is that one of the statements that they made and said, gosh, I really need to get to White Bear Lake every single day? Because that's where my daycare is.
I think they would probably, Ramsey County, if you were able to, if they would respond to an answer, which they do not respond, they would say, well, there's a lot of jobs up there in downtown White Bear Lake, which are high-paying, sustainable jobs. You've all been to you've been by 61. They have just oodles of jobs. And if they could take the jobs there, it would be worthwhile of them being downtown St. Paul, if they have kids in the schools, putting their kids in the schools, going up there to White Bear Lake to have one of these high-paid jobs out in downtown White Bear Lake, which, of course, these are the kind of jobs in downtown White Bear Lake they don't need cars for. So it's probably one of those big factories in downtown St. Paul or one of those big packing centers in downtown White Bear Lake. Something that you go to work and then you don't have to leave ever until, and the only thing you would
and
have
you
to...
don't have any kids in daycare that are going to daycare in St. Paul because they go to school in St. Paul, and you're going to be able to do all of this on the bus rapid transit within that time period you need in the morning to get everybody off to school and to daycare. So then you can get on that BRT again. So then you can go to White Bear Lake, and then you got to call that your child is sick. So you got to go right back down there to St. Paul, get home, take care of them, and then figure out how to do your daycare and then go back up again. I don't know. It's very impractical if you're thinking about it from those kind of perspectives. But now talking about White Bear Lake, there is the outreach that they did to those residents in White Bear Lake who are living within a close proximity of the proposed stop in White Bear Lake. Now let's hear about that citizen engagement.
On January 7th, the city of White Bear Lake hosted a community meeting for neighbors kind of immediately around the future downtown White Bear Lake station. Mayor Emerson and Commissioner Reinhardt were at that meeting to talk with folks. There was a mailing sent out to invite people to that meeting of really just kind of the area within a few blocks of that station. We really wanted to kind of have a small group conversation with the folks closest to that station. Had a pretty good turnout and some really good conversations. We corrected some misinformation that had gotten out there about traffic and safety, and kind of explained a little more about how the project would work. At this meeting, we also had projected onto one of the walls an animation that our team developed showing how the downtown White Bear Lake station would look, and it shows how a bus will get off of 61, serve the station, and then get back onto 61. And the purpose of that video was to kind of demystify how the station will work, because we've gotten a lot of comments from White Bear Lake residents asking, I don't understand how this will work, and so animation was a tool that we used to try to.
Mr. Bergman, did you catch that he said they sent out a little card to only those residents within 2 blocks of the station, that they really didn't want the rest of the public to know that they were having this meeting with just those few households? Then he says it was quite well attended. Now last week we showed the clip where he gave some numbers of attendance at many of these different outreach engagements, because Sue Vento actually asked him, how many does it mean when you say good attendance? And he specifically said that for this particular meeting, it was 6 or 8 people.
You're going to get a lot of fact-based, evident analytics that you're going to be able to make concrete, matter-of-fact decisions which are in the right direction by having that kind of input.
That's right. And he said that they came there with misunderstandings, and they got it all straightened out by giving them a little presentation of an automated depiction. Yes, an animated depiction of how the bus rapid transit is going to stop and start at the station.
It sounds like a cartoon of the Roadrunner and Bugs Bunny with Elmer Fudd chasing him around.
Well, let's hear where the discussion goes from here.
I'd be interested in being able to see the animation tool you used in the White Bear meeting.
Sure.
It's good.
Yeah.
I would really like to.
Yeah, Ramsey County's published it on our YouTube channel, so I'll follow up with you and send you the link.
Great.
During this meeting, one of the members of the Policy Advisory Committee that had actually the most questions to ask was Sue Vento, who is also on the Metropolitan Council. And so I have to give her credit for that she's asking questions, but some of her questions give you an inside look at what's going on in the background, in that they made this little animated video, but then what, didn't share it with the members of this advisory committee? That seems kind of odd to me, and so she's bringing it up. Well, I would like to have seen that. Well, yes, I would think that the advisory committee members would love to see what is being produced and put out in the market for the constituents to see, because after all, the constituents might ask them questions about what is in the materials.
And of course, Sue Vento is the last wife of St. Paul Congressman Bruce Vento.
Oh, the one whose name is on the trail.
And since they're very proud that they're running some animation or cartoons. You think that they would have a cartoon of of all those trees being clear cutted on on this environmental trail, which was dedicated by its name to her environmentalist, longtime environmentalist Congressman Bruce Vento of St. Paul.
Her husband, yes.
Yeah, her husband. And I can only see that cartoon. You got Elmer Fudd there chasing Bugs Bunny down the trail and cutting down I'm going to get you, you little wabbit. Cut down all the trees. You won't be able to hide from me.
And that's exactly the way it's going to be, because you see, for that BRT, they're going to need to have great visibility, because there's intersections it's going to be crossing. There's going to be a trail supposedly and a bike path alongside of it. But if you're going to have all that, you've got to have visibility. You can't have a big treed canopy over everything. It's just not going to work. And so in order to be able to see that nasty little rabbit, you got to cut down a tree. Chop one there, rabbit, where are you? Well, you know what? By the time they get done, there'll be no rabbits or any other animals on that ecological greenway trail that is there today, because many of the animals use that as a greenway, ecological pathway to get to the different watersheds between St. Paul and White Bear Lake.
Right. Use it for food, use it for protection, use it for water, use it for a way to get around. A lot of different wildlife. Now, of course, the bus rapid transit, there are all kinds of other alternatives. There's which are more rational and exorbitantly less expensive. not to least of all, of course, is the Highway 61 corridor, which I think you could pretty much run a bus right up in the middle of 61 without taking any other land. And I think this is not something that would be off the charts. It's been done before. And if the Minnesota Department of Transportation will not allow any bus rapid transit on their highways in that kind of way, you could easily do it for tremendously a fraction of a cost on White Bear Avenue. There are all these other alternatives that are more rational, practical, less expensive, more sustainable, more equitable, more altogether practical than this crazy, insane idea to put it up an environmental corridor simply because the county owns this. I can't figure out why they're doing it, but I think because there's these low energy people in Ramsey County like Vicki Reinhardt, Raphael Nortega, Jim McDonough, they think that we own this right away from when the historic train line used to be running there because we bought it. Why don't we just run it up there? Then we don't have to do any work, because isn't that what's going on in Ramsey County? We need to have the simplest way, even though it's by far the most expensive way.
They want to justify the purchase that they made that isn't the most cost-effective or the most practical route.
Right.
But they have to justify what their actions were in the past. I think you're onto something there. So let's take a look. We went out there and we found the animated presentation of how the bus rapid transit is going to find its way to White Bear Lake, and then once it's there, what happens?
The Rush Line Bus Rapid Transit BRT project is a proposed 14-mile transit route between Union Depot in Lowertown, St. Paul and downtown White Bear Lake. 21 stations will provide frequent all-day service along the route. The northernmost station would be located on Washington Avenue between 7th and 8th Streets in downtown White Bear Lake. Improvements are planned on Highway 61 at the 7th and 8th Street intersections to make pedestrian crossings safer. To allow people to conveniently walk to the station, new sidewalks would be provided on the south side of 8th Street between Washington Avenue and Highway 61, on the north side of 8th Street between Washington and Division Avenues, and along the east side of Washington Avenue. Buses would have access to the station by turning off of Highway 61 onto 7th Street. Washington Avenue would be converted to a one-way northbound street between 7th and 8th Streets. This allows most on-street parking to remain, as well as driveway access to homes on the west side of the street. This keeps the project mostly in public right-of-way, minimizing impacts to adjacent properties. The station would be located on the east side of Washington Avenue and would include a shelter, real-time arrival information, ticket payment machine and validator to speed up the boarding process, lighting, seating, security cameras, railings, bicycle parking, and landscaping. There will be a raised platform to allow people of all abilities to comfortably enter and exit the bus. Buses will have 3 doors, making it faster for passengers to get on and off. Because this is the end of the line, there would be a small driver restroom facility north of the station, and the platform would be long enough to accommodate 2 buses for a short period of time when needed. The bus would depart the station and turn right on 8th Street. A new traffic signal may be added at 8th Street and Highway 61 to help the BRT safely turn back onto the highway to travel south. The addition of 4 to 6 buses per hour in each direction would not impact traffic flow on Highway 61 or local streets. BRT buses can efficiently move more people during busy traffic times. Ramsey County is working with the City of White Bear Lake to identify strategies to help people access BRT stations through a variety of ways, such as improving biking and walking connections, adding connecting bus service, and potentially providing small amounts of parking and drop-off space for BRT users near the stations.
The BRT is a bus. She said so in that presentation at least 5 times, that it is a bus. It is a bus. The BRT is a bus.
I thought it was a light rail, and it has all the conveniences of the light rail, but it's just a regular old bus that's just swiveling in and out?
It's just a bus. It is a bus. But I can't wait for those amenities, including landscaping and 3 doors. Amazing. We're going to have buses with 3 doors.
3 doors, because that's going to speed up everything so much. Now, anytime they get sped up from their quick, instantaneous boarding, at the end of the line, of course. I mean, at the end of the line, buses always start out on a certain time, don't they? So it's like...
You don't get there any faster than you would have gotten there, because that's what the schedules say. But here is the other thing that can slow the takeoff from a station. If you are indeed looking to accommodate folks who are in wheelchairs, when they come on, they have to be strapped down properly, and that is going to take time. It doesn't just happen automatically, because the inside of the BRT is the same as any other bus.
And they haven't figured out how to do that effectively and efficiently on regular buses, but of course, when the bus rapid transit comes, they'll have the big solution. And then the big solution that we figured out for the bus rapid transit, maybe we'll move that over to other buses.
Now, here is something else they said in that. They said that the BRT going up and down Highway 61 with 6 to 8 times an hour will not impact Highway 61 or its traffic. So, if a BRT is only a bus, if we were to take the express bus that's currently on Highway 61 and have it be going up Highway 61 4 to 6 times an hour, if the BRT doesn't impact the traffic on Highway 61, a bus wouldn't either, would it? So why aren't we running this BRT the whole length of Highway 61 like the express bus does?
Bingo. No explanation.
And you notice that there's a stop on that little map, a stop on Arcade. Did you know that Arcade, once it hits Maplewood's border, what is it called? Highway 61.
Wow.
Wow. Amazing, huh? We wouldn't even have to be over there off of the Rush line. But then we would miss the whole Phelan Parkway doing that.
And what I see on Highway 61 is all kinds of government right-of-way. Certainly, when it hits Maplewood, there's all kinds of government right-of-way. They're ready to be used. And of course, this bus rapid transit is going to take so much pressure off the roadways that they'll probably be able to get rid of a couple lanes on Highway 60.
I think that's dreaming. I think that's dreaming. Now,
and if you take a look at Arcade itself, that's certainly as wide as the roadway in Richmond, Virginia. And do they have smarter, more ingenious planners in Richmond, Virginia than they do in the professionally brilliant planners in Ramsey County?
Well, you know,
like Andy Gislop?
And that's a good question. Let's say if it were, I mean, this is all water under the bridge. But there's this idea about that it couldn't have gone down White Bear Avenue or Payne or Arcade, which of course are where people have commerce, and there are shops and there's grocery stores and the facilities that people are going to every day for buying things and getting goods and services. The argument is that those streets are too narrow, that we can't have sidewalks and parking on both sides of the street. But if you were to modify those streets which is probably would cost less than the whole decimation of the Bruce Vento Trail, that you had your sidewalks adjusted a little bit and you took parking out of one side of the street and adjusted your lanes, you probably could get a dedicated bus lane in there.
For sure. And of course, the sprawled out community of White Bear Lake, they can't figure out how to even get their dedicated bus lane out there without making this mega city a White Bear Lake with one-way roads.
Well, now next we
Why don't they use that solution down in other places if they need to?
Well, next we have an update on what was discussed in November at the November meeting about the Harvester Park in Maplewood and taking parking out of Harvester Park and taking parkland and turning that into parking.
And just recently on January 21st in Maplewood, Andy and I attended a community open house related to Maplewood's master plan for Harvest Park. So Harvest Park is adjacent to the Highway 36 Rush Line station, where we're proposing a park and ride facility within the limits of the park. And so we're coordinating very closely with the city of Maplewood on the future of that park. The city is leading a master plan that's kind of reimagining how the space within that park will be allocated to the different athletic uses and other recreational uses, and thinking about how to fit the Rush Line or a joint use parking facility in that park that would serve both transit users and park users. And Mayor Abrams was at that meeting. I don't know if you'd like to add anything about the discussions there.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good opportunity for the community to see the plans and to see how all of this integrates. So I just told Andrew a while ago that I really appreciated that you were there, because I think it helps people with a vision of what it could look like. Because that park really needs some love and attention. Currently it doesn't have any lights, and so there's lights proposed, and picnic facilities, and a new playground, and different types of uses, including potential pickleball, bocce ball, soccer, volleyball, which certainly there are a couple of those things there now, but it's in need of some love, and so this is really a good way that we can work together.
That woman speaking is the appointed Mayor Marley Abrams of Maplewood. And her comment about this community outreach was it was a good opportunity to share the vision with the residents that attended the meeting. Well, that of course is all a very superficial statement indeed. And then she goes on to say that, well, one of the problems with the park that is going to be solved by the bus rapid transit going through there is that we're going to have lighting in the park. Does that sound like a BRT issue, or does that sound like a Maplewood Park and Recreation problem?
The reimagination sounds like a crime problem that's going out to a desolated park from a BRT issue.
Yes.
She didn't say they would have cameras out there, Bud, or police officers out there, or security.
Right. And then she goes on to talk about all these big plans that they're going to put into the park master plan, how they're going to develop this park, and I don't see how that actually ties into the BRT whatsoever.
Well, I think once
other
they
than to put a little salve on the wounds of the residents who live around there, that they're going to have a park and ride in their backyard.
Well, once you take park space away to build your parking ramp and all that goes along, all the lanes that go in there and all the drive in, you're taking away parkland. So the reimagination is how we're going to put more. It seems like they're going to have more activities and we're going to squish it down to less space.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see that happen. Now this, of course, is being talked about in front of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we will have some film footage on that in the coming weeks. But there again, what we've seen oftentimes happens at this commission level is that they're given the plans by the city staff of Maplewood told this is what we've decided, and then they're expected to just, take out their rubber stamps and say approved.
At this master planning session, which they thought was exciting and brilliant, again, no video, no audio, no minutes, we're just so excited because we're giving Maplewood, we're going to be giving a lot of love. And Andy and Frank they're going to be passing out a lot of love too.
Next, we have an update with regard to the east side of St. Paul.
When we're on the east side and we talk to folks about improving transit on the east side, we get really positive reactions. That's been the case throughout this planning process. Some more localized concerns on Robert Street. We've heard from businesses who have concerns about loss of parking, especially at around the 10th and Robert area. And we are working on some design refinements that could address some of those concerns. Let's see, interest in changes to the Bruce Vento Trail is a really common thing that we encounter on the east side and in Maplewood. That will likely continue to be the case as the design for this project continues, and we continue to work to really make sure that the Bruce Vento Trail remains a community asset, even when there is change within that right of way with the introduction of BRT. And up in White Bear Lake regarding the downtown station, we've heard some concerns about what does that mean for traffic in the area. And, a bus every 10 to 15 minutes isn't likely to cause much of a traffic issue, and so there's a big education piece.
He indicated the people on the east side of St. Paul are supportive. Although we don't know why they're supportive, what part about this BRT program for the Rush Line are they supportive of? How do they see that it's different than the bus service that could be, should be, or is in the east side right now? Certainly, if there's problems with the bus service on the east side, maybe the easy fix is just to fix the bus system rather than having to construct a whole brand new BRT system, thinking that that's going to be the be-all, end-all to fix whatever the problems are that the bus has, considering that a bus and a BRT are both buses. Now, the other thing we heard is that he did say, sort of as an offhand remark, that they've got some concerns, they hear concerns from people down on Robert Street about parking. Well, that's right, there's businesses down there that they're going to lose a bunch of their parking, which means that their customers won't have any place to park. And that, of course, means loss in revenue. And some of the people who were at this meeting who spoke at public comment actually were speaking to that issue of parking. But you can see how he just brushed that aside. And then he did acknowledge that on the Maplewood side, that they're getting all kinds of comments of people about the Bruce Vento Trail, and that the people aren't that happy about the bus rapid transit using the Bruce Vento Trail, and that they expect those comments to continue.
I think they need some re-education. Couldn't they send these people who have all these residents to readjustment camp or re-education camp?
Or they could create another animated presentations like they did for the 6 or 8 people in White Bear Lake, that they could then put on little CDs and DVDs and send it out to all the people living along the Bruce Vento Trail in Maplewood to help to switch their mind.
Whenever you go to any of these meetings that they have where they allow residents come in, all you hear is skepticism, negativity, complaints from the residents. But Frank says everything is positive.
Even the fact that they're getting a lot of pushback, but they're going to continue forward despite the pushback. Well, now we have next then the comments though of the White Bear Lake mayor.
There's also there's a lot of change going on in that area with the passage of the school bond referendum in November. So the school campus that's just about 2 blocks to the east of the station is going to be expanded with the passage of of those funds, and so people are wondering how circulation of vehicles is going to work in that area, and we're coordinating very closely at the technical level with the school district and with the city to make sure all of these changes are complementing each other and working for the neighborhood. Mayor Emerson, I don't know if you'd like to add anything on that.
Well, no, I mean, I think, MnDOT's in the conversation, Ramsey County's in the conversation, because we have all these different streets and highways, et cetera. So I think the coordination will be there. I mean, it's just going to take some time, but it is an education piece too. People need to know. If you're the unknown, once you can show them, like when we showed them the station for the end of the line. They envisioned this big, humongous building, and we show them a platform, and they said, "That's it." So, I mean, I think the misconceptions get in the way sometimes, and I think as we move forward, and we'll work very closely with the school district and the other partners.
So with regard to the coordination of the rush line going through White Bear Lake, going close to the new school, a building, and then there's all the thing about the traffic in downtown White Bear Lake, and then we've got the mayor saying, I believe that the coordination will be there. It will be there, and this is going to work out fine. We're going to get there okay. Everything's going to go wonderful. Now, does this sound like she's an advocate for the residents of White Bear Lake? Or does it sound like she's an advocate for the project?
Well, that's not a complicated question to answer, because you can see that when it comes to them having their meetings without cameras, she's obviously very happy with the system, telling the residents, the residents have nothing to worry about, because Frank here, who must be part of this Technical Advisory Commission, because he says we're going to be doing it. So the secret meetings that Frank is attending and Andy's attending, and I don't think this Chair Emerson, the White Bear Lake Mayor, is attending, but they all mean well, and they're doing it all behind the scenes. You have nothing to worry about.
Right, and she trusts them implicitly.
Right.
She has no questions that would suggest otherwise. Actually, I don't know that I've really ever heard her ask any questions of any substantive type in any of these meetings.
It sounds to me as she distrusts the residents, and she trusts the people who are working in secret. I think that's an overall philosophical conception. Don't worry about anything. They're watching out for you.
Next, we have comments from Commissioner Vicki Reinhardt. And as you listen to this, think to yourself, is she an advocate for her constituents, or is she an advocate for the project and supporting the decision that was made to buy the Bruce Vento Trail right-of-way, and that now they're going to use what it is that they bought, even though that's probably not the best location for it. Let's take a look.
Well, and I think too, with that neighborhood, first of all, it was a very small group of people actually that were asked to come because it was very specific to that neighborhood. And so other people were welcome to come. It's just that we wanted to really hear from them. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was a comment was made about, well, the owner of Beartown complained a lot, and that's the only reason anything got changed. And we said, well, actually, that's not the case. What happened was we knew there was an issue. We sat down, figured out what would make the most sense, worked with the city of White Bear Lake, and I said, the reason that we're here today is to get input so that we can resolve issues. These are not carved in stone yet, and now's your time. And people seem to appreciate the fact that they had a voice, and it wasn't just certain people that had a voice or input into this, and that everybody there was really participating. And it seemed to kind of let people know that we're there because we really want to hear what you have to say.
Commissioner Vicki Reinhardt confirmed that when they set up this meeting, it was indeed only to be really targeted for the few houses that are in and around that particular station. While, as she said, oh, the rest of the public is welcome to come. Well, if they knew about it,
If they knew
I mean, if
what
you
was
posted
occurring.
it, if you advertised it, if you let anybody else know, of course, sure, it's a public meeting. Anybody can go, but nobody knows it's happening. So it's basically the same as having a closed meeting. Now, here was another fascinating thing that she said, that she was telling somebody at this meeting, one of the 6 to 8 people that attended the meeting, that really, this is their time to say their piece, that she's there to listen to them, and this is their time to be heard. And I'm thinking to myself, this meeting she's talking about only happened a few weeks ago, within a month ago. Wasn't the time to hear what the residents' input was on this whole project like 2-3 years ago, before you got so far down the project pipeline that there's no backing up the train? Or the bus in this case?
You look at Vicki Reinhardt there, Ramsey County Commissioner Vicki Reinhardt, and you said, boy, she must be hearing a barrage of criticism and negativity, because she looks exhausted and worn out.
Next, then, we're going to hear about the Phelan area.
Nelsie.
Can you share a bit more about the discussion around the Payne Avenue station?
Yeah, so at the Payne Avenue station, there's, we have our design, which has platforms on the west side of Payne Avenue, and we have our bat lanes along Phelan Boulevard, which for the most of Phelan Boulevard, we're converting the existing general purpose transit or traffic lane to the bat lane. At the intersection of Payne and Phelan, there is some concern about traffic capacity. And so our 15% plans do have some additional roadway capacity improvements there. And there's some concern that we don't have the right balance of roadway capacity in terms of how that relates to the pedestrian environment. That added capacity does widen one of the lanes of the roadway a little bit, and so it makes that crossing distance longer. And at a station location, there's concern that's contrary to what we're trying to do as part of a transit project. And so we're working with all the appropriate partners to try to find that balance between appropriate traffic capacity and transit travel times through there with that pedestrian and bicycle environment.
So he's acknowledging that going all the way down to the Payne Avenue station is creating quite a number of problems, that they don't have the capacity that they need to have in order to have this work the way they want it to work. And the reason that they're going that direction down to Payne is so that they can go down the Phelan Parkway. And we've heard that the reason that they want to go down the Phelan Parkway is so that they can get to Mung Village. And yet we have not seen any statistics or any data that supports that Mung Village, or the people who use Mung Village, or the vendors at Mung Village actually are driving the bus and asking for the BRT to go to Mung Village. It's a creation of Ramsey County to go to Mung Village, because certainly if they've got bus service now, they would know how well that bus service is being used, if it's being used significantly at all.
And you kind of get the sense from the implication from these planners at Ramsey County is, well, either we wish more Hmong people would drive less so you wouldn't clog up our roads, or maybe they're thinking, wow, we haven't given the Hmong, by giving you this little stop here, we're really paying attention to the Hmong culture and Hmong people. Now, we might have ignored them before, but now we have this stop. So look at, we have changed, because this Hmong, at the Hmong Village, you know what? There's going to be, this is just a big benefit for being part of Ramsey County.
Right,
So,
and it's just a fake out. In other words, because I know a lot of Hmong families, and I will tell you this, is that they are very busy. They have many activities going on, And for the most part, they have to be in two places at the same time, almost all the time. And if you have that kind of a schedule in your family life, because you've got kids involved in this activity, or you have this community activity you're engaged in, you're working because they're very hard workers, everybody's working, you don't have time or the luxury to say, well, I'm going to stand around even 15 minutes waiting for the BRT so that I can have one kid here, bring another kid there, get my groceries, and then go to work besides. It doesn't work that way. And you know, there are a lot of people that will snicker about the fact that you can always, you know, count on the Hmong community to support the auto industry. Right. Because they use cars, and they use them significantly because of their lifestyle, because they're very busy, because they're industrious, because they have many places to go all the time.
Because there's multi-generational families.
That's right.
In the culture.
Absolutely, and their kids are involved in everything.
And they're managing managing grandma, they're managing their family, they're managing their relatives' family, their aunts or uncles, and they're all coordinated working together in an unbelievable system.
Absolutely.
And look what we're giving you. Yeah. We're giving you bus rapid transit here. And most of what their solutions have been whenever they're going around in some kind of convoluted way to try to throw some sort of supposed political bone to somebody is they build another bridge. Because, I mean, these are real bridges that you drive buses on. These aren't little walkway bridges. These are genuine, bona fide bridges. Right. So what's the solution? Why don't we just put in another $10 million bridge there? Because that's the solution in many cases on this line. Right. They didn't get a bridge in White Bear Lake downtown, but they should have some. I mean, wouldn't it be better?
There's one at Burkle Road, though. Okay, so White Bear Lake.
These are new bridges.
Yes.
These aren't bridges that have been there and they're reusing. These are bridges because we're doing the most efficient way to have this bus rapid transit. And of course, this, beside the point, is whether it is actually rapid. Yes. That might be the biggest disguise of all.
They just had to put the R in there just as a place filler, right? Well, anyway, we have now some of our film clips on the comments that were made by the public. Let's take a look.
Joe Gregory, and I have keys downtown St. Paul on Robert Street, and I'm representing the whole Rossmore group of buildings, businesses in the building. And I just want everybody to know what they're proposing is to take away the parking. There's only 3 blocks of parking up in front of our spots. And now they've already moved the parking on Jackson for the bike lane, they're moving the parking on 9th and 10th for bike lanes. And then so we will have virtually not one parking spot around the whole building. And this will be extremely detrimental to all of our businesses. Now, we've been there 30 years, but that has been a restaurant for 100 years. We're doing a survey with all of our customers to find out who will come. And we also want to do an economic impact to find out with the employees of each of our businesses. Each of us own our properties. They are all condos. So if we can't do business there, who else can do business there? I mean, it would really be valued, the property. And all we're asking is not to do a bad thing. Just keep the parking on those 2 blocks and just, I mean, it might increase the time by 2 minutes, but it would be just so important, you know, it would keep us alive. As long
This is the lady, as she indicated, representing the businesses along Robert Street. And the fact that the loss of parking is going to have a detrimental impact on those businesses. Now, we hear time and time again how the BRT is going to help businesses. But these businesses don't believe that. Now, we have another clip as well to add to this. Let's take a look.
Could you identify the businesses? So we are, Black Sheep Pizza, right? Us, Camp Char, Sour Heat, there's also Scott Miller, so there's a hair salon, There's Tim Whiskers, who's at the end of Brewery. And we are one of the most, right now, successful, because there is no retail hardly in downtown St. Paul street front. We are one of the most successful blocks at this point in time. And then Lunds is not happy either. They do have the parking lot underneath, but because of, there's been a lot of trouble, they had to hire a full-time policeman. So they took all their employees out of the ramp and put them into their parking lot. So they can afford to hire a policeman full-time. So, you know, that lessens parking underneath their spot, and some of those people have to park out on the street. And, you know, some people just like pull up.
It's interesting that she was talking about Lunds. Now that's right, there is a grocery store potentially on the Rush line. That's Lunds, a block or so off of it. But my question is that the grocery store that they're hoping to help the people by Mount Airy get to go south into St. Paul to go to the Lunds grocery store? Can't they make sure that they have proper bus service to simply go from Mount Airy down Robert Street to the Lunds grocery store?
Well, I don't think they necessarily want to go to Lunds. It sounds like it's pretty unsafe down at Lunds.
Well, now that was also enlightening, that she's sharing the fact that Lunds had to move their employees where they were parking to somewhere else and hire a police officer because it was unsafe down there. So what makes you think that the people from White Bear Lake and Maplewood are going to get on the BRT to go south into St. Paul late at night for the nightlife? Oh,
Well,
what nightlife, right?
Right, there's no retail. I think she just represented there's very little or no, hardly any retail downtown St. Paul.
Yeah.
But there's Lunds. They go to Lunds.
That's right. So it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, but it's important to hear what the business owners have to say.
Like you mentioned doing a survey with your customers about what they would come. Do you know right now if the majority of it is car or foot traffic that's coming to the businesses there?
I'm actually kind of surprised, even some of the state employees that do drive down, because I think they want to just be quick. But most of the surveys right now are saying they would not come. They
Right
do
now,
say, it does
are they
say,
using cars to get to your business, or if they walk?
well, the people that walk say it does not apply. Okay, so the
Okay.
people that work at the city and
What
federal.
percentage would you estimate that to be?
Well, I'd say, well, right now, I mean, we're gonna do, with all the
Yeah, we
businesses,
just started.
we are gonna present this to the representative, you know, and just, because we need to see the economic impacts ourselves, and just how many people won't come. But, I mean, people that are regulars, I mean, they're not, the minute I say they're gonna take away our parking, they are not happy. You know, they just can't believe, like, how could you know, just, Jackson is gone, you know, there's.
I was surprised. She indicated that, you know, there are a number of people that eat at their establishments over lunchtime that work for the state of Minnesota, but that they don't walk to the place to have their lunch. They don't take the bus to get there. They actually take their car out of their parking lot and drive it over to the restaurant, park it, have lunch, and then get in their car and go back to work because it's quicker than the bus.
What would Vicki Reinhardt do? I mean, that's the question. I can only imagine. She'd probably do the same from the Ramsey County Court building.
Well, we've come to the end of our program. Mr. Berglund, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And viewers, thank you for tuning in to this week's program. We'll continue our coverage next week. Bye-bye.